So in this video I'm going to show you 5 great stitches for embroidering circles. This is the express version. If you want to see the longer, more detailed version, you can click on the link above in the top right corner now, and that will take you to that video. So the first stitch that I'm going to show you is an eyelet wheel, nice simple one to start with. So I'm just going to make a hole in the centre, because all of these stitches will go down into that hole, so it's a good idea just to make it a little bit bigger, as there'll be a lot of stitches going into it. So I've just got a waist knot on the top that will get cut off later, 2 small stitches on the edge just to start my thread off, and then I'm going to come up on the edge of the circle. Doesn't really matter where you start with this, but I'm starting at the bottom and my needle is going down into the hole in the middle. So I'm doing 4 points of the compass. I've done south, this is north. We'll do east and west, and then I'm going to split those in half and do a stitch in between my 4 points, and then I'm going to work my way around the circle again, just a stitch halfway between those to create my eyelet, like so. I'm just going to change my thread here because that uses quite a lot of thread, so you can put as many spokes in as you like. The more spokes you put in, the rounder your wheel will look, but you can choose how many you want to do. So I'm just finishing that off with 2 small knots, cut my waist knot off. I've started a second thread here, and I'm just going to work a stitch across the ends of the spokes. So I'm going to come up on the end of one spoke, I'm working a back stitch, so I'm going back on myself, meets the end of the previous stitch. So come up on the next spoke, and just taking the stitch backwards, so a little back stitch all the way around just to cover up the edge of the circle and make the eyelet look like a wheel. So the more spokes you have, the shorter these stitches will be and it will look more round, so just something to bear in mind. So just working my way, covering up my starting stitches there, and there we have it forming the wheel, and that's an eyelet wheel. So the second stitch is a buttonhole wheel, so very similar to an eyelet but a slightly more decorative look to the edge of this one. So I'm going to start my thread in exactly the same way. Put your knot out of the way somewhere because that will get cut off. 2 small stitches on the very edge of the circle, these will get covered up. It's a great way of starting and finishing a thread without having to turn anything over and see what's going on the back. So I'm starting on the edge of my circle as before, and down into the middle of the circle as before, but I'm not pulling it all the way through this time. I'm making a loop and I'm bringing my needle up inside that loop on the edge of the circle, just a little distance away from that first stitch. So down into the centre, make a loop, pull the loop to the outside of the circle for this to work. Needle comes up in the middle of that, and just tension it by pulling your thread away from the centre and to the outer circle, so pulling it away from the circle, and that will form that little stitch. So down in the centre, form the loop, needle comes up inside the loop, tension it away from the centre of the circle, and just work your way around as before. You can just space these by eye, you don't need to measure them, but try and do them nice and evenly if you can. And then to finish off, just stitch over that last one just to hold it in place. So the third one is a Rhodes stitch. This is a nice simple one and great if you want some texture and you want to fill in the shape, fill in the whole of the shape. So I'm just starting my thread right in the middle because this is all going to get covered up. Doesn't matter where you start this one, but a sort of top or a side is good because you want to mark out where your halfway point is. So stitch right across the middle of the circle. And then I'm just going to come up next to where I started that and cross over the thread and go down on the other side, on the opposite side. So each stitch will cross over the previous stitch, come up nice and close. We're going to fill this shape in, so we don't want any gaps, and down the other side. And you can already see what effect that's having. So up, cross over, and down on the other side. And that means all these stitches will pile up on top of each other in the middle and give you a really nice texture in the middle, so a really good one for some 3-dimension to your work. It's a little bit harder to get this one nice and neat, so just pay attention to the edges where you come up and down. Come up nice and close and try and form that nice circle shape. And what you really want to do is when you get to the halfway point, the east or west point, you want to be in a straight line if you can. So I'm slightly over, so if you just space them out a little bit at the bottom and a bit closer together at the top, and that will swing those round. So it's quite easy to adjust if you're not quite right. But if you just keep them nice and close, you should find that you get around okay. So I'm doing a little bit wider at the bottom, a bit closer at the top, and that will fill in nicely. And you can see that beautiful texture in the middle, how high that is. Uses quite a lot of thread, so one to think about when you're choosing your stitch. Last stitch in here. Just cut off my waist knot. So we're going to do another stitch now that covers the whole shape. This is a satin stitch. So I've started my thread as before. Now this forms 2 parts to this stitch, so I'm going to just work a split stitch around the edge first. You don't have to do this stage, but I quite like it. I find it helps it to make the edges a little bit smoother and the shape nice and circular. It just raises the edge up a little bit as well to help with that. So I'm just doing a forward stitch and coming back up through the middle of the stitch, splitting it and just working all the way around the shape like that. Very simple stitch, but nice and small so you can get a beautiful circular shape. So just coming back to the beginning. So I'm going to start a new thread now for the next part, or if you've got enough thread left you can just put some starting stitches in, some holding stitches, just in case you have to take the satin stitch out for any reason. So it's as if it's a new thread. Again, doesn't matter where you start, so you're going straight across the shape, up on the outside of the split stitch, easy to say, and down on the outside as well. I'm just going to go back and forth with this. I'm going to come up on the same side, take your thread across and down on the opposite side. You can go round and round this shape as we did for the Rhodes. It does use quite a lot of thread, so this is another method that you can also use for the Rhodes if you want to use slightly less thread. So stitches lie nice and tight to each other so there's no gaps. And just work your way back and forth. So all these stitches should be parallel. Just running out of thread, so I'm going to change my thread here. Just go back to the middle and carry on to the other side. Good idea to start in the middle, and that sets your angle of your stitch, and then go to first one side and then you can finish the other side. Keep going as far as you can just to make sure you fill that in, and I just missed a few stitches this side. Just jumping over there. Nice smooth flat shape, so a great one for a flat filling of a circle. So the last one is very textured, and this is a woven wheel. So I've just marked the centre again, and I'm actually drawing myself some guidelines on here. This will all get covered so you won't see these. So I need to split the circle into 5, so an upside down Y and then a line in between the 2 is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to weave this, so you need an odd number of spokes. You can have more than 5, but it must be odd or the weaving effect won't work. So I'm going to put my spokes in first. I'm just going to follow those lines that I've drawn in, coming up from the outside of the circle and down into the middle. I'm actually going to use a second colour in this. This is a great one for mixing some different colours up, and you can use as many as you like. I'm just going to use the 2 to demonstrate with, but you can put as many colours in as you like. So I'm starting a second thread off I'm going to come up right near the centre of that circle as close as I can. Now I've turned the needle over here and putting the eye through. That means it won't catch on any of the threads. So a great way just to help you with the weaving, so you're not putting the point of the needle through. So just turn it over and use the eye. And I'm weaving, so I'm going over and under and over and under. So there's an under, over the next one, under that third one. So just weaving in and out of these spokes, which is why we need an odd number. You can pull this quite tight initially, so a little bit tighter tension in the centre, and we will loosen that off as we work towards the outside. Just make sure it doesn't catch on the spokes. I'm just working my way around the shape. Doesn't matter which way around you go. You can go the other way around if you like. Just going to fill in. You can see that circle start filling up now with this colour. So I'm going to fill in a little bit more. And as you come out, just loosen off on the tension a little bit. These stitches get longer, so if you pull them tight, it will all bunch up in the middle. I'm going to bring the light pink back up where I finished with the dark pink, and just carry on over and under. So a little bit looser on the tension now. You can feel when it's too tight because it will start pulling upwards. So it's a nice textural stitch, and you can see it would make great roses. Really good stitch for roses, but great for filling in the shape and for some texture as well, and for lots of different colours. So a really versatile one, this stitch. And I'm just coming back in with my dark pink for the edge. Go as far as you can to the edge. Make them a little bit looser in the tension to cover up that line. And just take the needle through to the back to the finish. And I'm just easing the stitches out to find a nice shape. So I hope you've enjoyed these 5 stitches. Don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell for notifications of when we upload something new. We've got loads more videos on our YouTube channel. Do check those out here. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.